Hello, and welcome to the CDO Magazine series of one-on-one interviews with CDOs, data leaders, and key influencers. I'm your host, Robert Lutton, Vice President, Sandhill Consultants, coming to you today from Toronto, Canada. On behalf of the CDO Magazine, I have the pleasure of introducing another Canadian, Jaspreet Ghuman, who is the Director of Data Management at Give and Go Food. Welcome, Jas.
Thanks, Robert. Pleasure to be here.
So, Jas, for our listeners, because I actually had to look up what Give and Go Foods does, could you maybe give a little bit of background into what the organization does?
Yeah, certainly. So, Give and Go, we are into the snacking segment, manufacturing segment, essentially. And we have been around since 1989, and we are a Canadian company. And I'm pretty sure everybody must have, tried our 2-bite brownies and 2-bite cupcakes. So that's been our history, that we started with 2-bite brownies, which has been our flagship product since the last 10, 12 years. And we have been doing pretty well since the last 13 years. And just a couple of years back, we were acquired by Mondelez. So now essentially we are a Mondelez company. And we not only produce or manufacture our products in Canada and US, but we also manufacture Mondelez's products, Cadbury's and Oreos, right now in Canada and US too.
I must admit, guilty pleasure of eating some of the snacks. So who doesn't enjoy those snacks? But so as a director of data management, you've probably taken on more responsibilities with this acquisition and things like that. But could you just give our listeners an idea of your key responsibilities?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I manage 3 different functions, one being master data management. So that's essentially, the 2 ERPs which we have. So anything which goes into that ERP, all the data which goes in there, which is being used by the business for our day-to-day business. So that's the one aspect, which my team handles. And the second one being the data platform one, wherein we have built a cloud Azure data platform. So which helps essentially us to centralize everything, and then that data is being used by different business functions to make effective decisions. And the third one being analytics and data science, which is essentially utilizing what we do on the MDM and the data platform side and give that flexibility to the user so that they can actually go search for the data and try to answer the questions which they have and utilize that data again to help fulfill their business objectives. So those are the three different distinct functions which I essentially am responsible for.
So obviously, when you were putting those 3 functional areas together, you've obviously had to build a data strategy around those, and some would hopefully call it an effective data strategy, because that's what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to kind of slowly go into this, but then expand, and obviously we're looking for your knowledge and your experience. So if we can begin with sort of a rudimentary question, but why should an organization have a data strategy?
Yes. So essentially, if a company doesn't have a data strategy, then it's like, you're kind of running blind. So you obviously have a goal and an objective that this is what a company wants to do in the next year or further years, and how you're going to do that. So that's where that strategy part comes in, that you actually need to strategize that what you would need to go from point A to point B. So that's where a data strategy becomes very, very important, because you need to have those data points or those data sources to make informed decisions. And then as we are talking about data strategy, it's more than that in terms of, that what are the different processes, what are the different tools, what are the different people who would be involved in that in terms of roles and responsibilities to help you craft that. So that's essentially, what a data strategy is, that if you want to go to reach somewhere, you definitely need a path, and data strategy gives you that path or vision to go there.
And of course, it obviously links to the business strategy as well. And there's a parallel to that. I'm sure that organizations, I'm sure from your experience, you've seen data strategies that are large or small. From your perspective, could you kind of give a highlight of what an effective data strategy is and what it is not? Because I think that there's probably some differences of opinion as to should it be 150 pages or should it be 10 pages or what should be in it. But can you just describe what it should be and what it should not be?
Right. Now, I would say, making things simple is always very, very difficult. And that's the same thing that goes with the data strategy too, that as simple you can keep it. And that's the better it is, because we can complicate it as much as we want. But then again, coming back to your question, which is that what is not a data strategy?
Right.
Essentially, in my previous experiences, what I've seen is generally, people or organizations think that if they just, acquire, or extract all the data which they have, they push it into a data lake or something of that sort, for example, that's a data strategy. But that's not a data strategy. You are just, pumping and dumping. So essentially,
that must be Canadian term, just pumping and dumping, but but I do like that. So yeah.
But that's where that difference comes in. That a good data strategy, it always is aligned with the organization's goals or objectives, because that's where it starts. And that's where that data strategy also need to be aligned with that what the company wants to do, first of all, from an overall business strategy perspective. So that can be anything, either you want to maximize your revenue, grow your revenue, reduce your cost, process efficiency. So those are the things which we need to look at, first of all, but what the organization wants to do. And that includes all the different functions as well. So that's the first starting point for an effective data strategy.
And probably peeling the onion a little bit more and going into it, because we are talking about the data strategy for this interview. What recommendations would you provide on how a CDO or data leader should go about implementing such an enterprise data strategy? What's been successful for you? What kind of recommendations would you provide?
Right. So like implementing comes at a later stage. So again, going back to, first of all, you need to know the objective goals. And then in order to do that, you have to work with the different functions. Because at the end of the day, before even implementing, you need to get a buy-in from not only the different functions, but also from the top management, because there is a cost associated to it.
Right.
That how you're going to implement it. So that's what I normally call it, that you need, cheerleaders around you from different functions who can help you sell that data strategy to the senior management or the senior leaders. And once you have that, then of course you need to sit down and see, what kind of resources you have, both in terms of tools, technologies, people, and then you need to invest in those resources, because you are of course going to first of all see, what's your current architecture like, infrastructure like,
right?
Essentially your as is state.
Yep.
For everything, processes and tools, people, everything, and then that this is where your data strategy needs to be, where you want to go. And that's the gap which you have. And these are the different areas which you need to invest into. So that's something, which we would need to invest into, and then, simultaneously start implementing on that data strategy as well, breaking it down into smaller chunks.
One of the things that we see a lot in business and data strategies is targeting the business value outcomes. Would you expect to see these highlighted when you talk about, doing your effective data strategy? Would you expect this to sort of say, you focus on the business value outcomes first of all, then you work your way backwards? What's your opinion on, setting out the business value outcomes?
Certainly, that's the only way to, sell it, to get buy-ins, because I mentioned about cheerleaders, right? Yep. From different functions, and that essentially means that the functions, they believe in your idea of the data strategy and what you're going to do, and they're only going to believe that if we are going to address their goal, their objective, what they want to do, and also in terms of that we have to speak their language. I cannot go to a marketing or a salesperson and start talking about what operations is doing from their goals and objective perspective, because that's not what it's their goals or objectives. So that's why we need to speak their language so that they understand, from their perspective, what benefit they're going to get if this data strategy gets implemented. So that's what it's the most important thing, speaking their language.
Thank you for your time today. We appreciate it. We hope that we can get a chance and have you come back and talk about what's going on with yourself and Give and Go Food in the future.
Absolutely, Robert. And again, likewise, it was a pleasure talking to you.
Absolutely, we do appreciate it. Thank you, and lots of good nuggets in there. For our listeners, please visit cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews. Thank you.